Hello everyone, welcome to the topic of Jean Piaget and his cognitive development theory. Now, one thing that needs to be remembered over here is that in exams, this can come in multiple ways. So, one way it can come is they can just give direct question of write a question on Jean Piaget. If they give a question on Jean Piaget, just writing the cognitive development part, that is his cognitive theory part, is not enough because you have to write something more about his theory on the schemas, about his theory of epistemology. What is epistemology basically? Those things you need to add in your answer. Second, if a question comes on just cognitive development, like a question can also come as write a note on Ja Piaget and cognitive development. There also you have to write everything. But I just want to warn you why, because this is a very practical scenario, and to be very candid, it has happened with me. So what exactly had happened was in my final MD exam in the first paper, we had around 4 questions out of 10. We had 4 questions on neuroanatomy. So first one was limbic system. Then there was one question on hypothalamus. Then there was one question on parietal lobe, and there was another anatomy question that I exactly can't recall. But yeah, like 4 questions out of 10, 4 questions were on anatomy. Okay. Now what happened was, as I was writing the 4 questions, as an end of that, there was also a question called structural theory of mind. One question was given like this. Okay. So, the other question was, I think one question was on the dopaminergic pathways, and the paper was pretty basic. And one question was on Karen Horney, a scientist was given. So, one question was on Karen Horney. Another question was on dopamine systems, dopaminergic pathways. So, this was more or less the paper. So, as you can see, almost 40% was on neuroanatomy. So what happened was, one was scientist, one was neurochemistry, and so while writing, after writing 4 neuroanatomy questions, and the easiest one, that is the dopaminergic pathway, I answered it first. So after writing it, when I looked into the structural theory of mind, it basically talked about Freud's structural theory of mind. Okay, right, about the id, ego, superego, those things. Now that thing had completely, in the in exam, obviously you are very tensed and you don't think properly. I mean, the thing is that we focus on some particular things, and in that we make some silly mistakes. What I made was a super silly mistake. So it was the structural theory of mind, and I thought that they were talking about the TOM, that is a theory of mind hypothesis, the mirror neurons, the temporal pole, temporoparietal junction. I thought that they were talking about all those things, right? Since already there were so many questions on neuroanatomy. And as a result of that, I did, instead of writing Freud's structural theory, they didn't mention Freud's structural theory of mind. They just said write a structural theory of mind. So the structure means that they're asking about the neuroanatomical structure. Yeah, another anatomical question I remember now was association cortices. So it was again a very long question writing about all the association cortices of the brain. But anyways, so limbic system, hypothalamus, parietal lobe, and association cortices. 4 neuroanatomy question. One was dopaminergic pathways. One was Callahan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's already done. And the other two are based on basically neurophysiology or something like that. But coming to the structural theory of mind, I made the blunder, and 10 marks. For 10 marks, I wrote the entire, neuroanatomical substrate of theory of mind and mirror neurons. And after I submitted the paper, I came out, And I was discussing the paper. I said, so mirror neurons came and people were looking. I mean, my batchmates were looking at me, right? Like, mirror neurons. Where did you find mirror neurons? Like, there was no question on that. I said, no, there was theory of mind, right? And they said, no, it is actually Freud's. They were also a little bit confused. So, because I was saying with such confidence back then, they said, no, it's Freud's structural theory of mind. At that point of time, the sky crashed on my head. That I had read about topographical theory of mind, structural theory of mind, the defense mechanisms, the dream analysis, all those things, free association. And ultimately, even though I knew about everything, I at that moment of exam, I couldn't write about the structural theory of mind. So why I am saying this is because in exam, your brain is in basically hyperdrive mode, right? Your central executive network, dorsal and ventral attention networks are in hyperactivated, not only hyperactivated, like super hyperactivation mode, right? Because you have the time constraint and you're writing very fast. So what happens is we often miss the subtle things, right? So suppose a question comes like cognitive development, any question comes cognitive development, always think about Piaget, okay, Jean Piaget. That just because in some universities I have seen they have just written a question like write a note on cognitive development. So in that case, we become confused. What is memory cognitive development, right? Don't be confused. Cognitive development just means that they're asking you about Ja Piaget and his theory of cognitive development. Now, coming to human development, mainly we know about three main theories, or rather, there are other theories also, but the hierarchy of studying them are first, you need to study Freud's psychosexual theories, then, you need to study Piaget's cognitive developmental theory, then, you need to study Erik Erikson's lifespan theory or socio-cultural or social development theory, psychosocial development theory. Then you can go to Vygotsky or Kohlberg's moral development. Okay, but Piaget had given a very different form of theory, and we'll talk more about Piaget's contribution. But please understand that Piaget was someone who called himself a genetic epistemologist. So, what is he was Swiss and from Switzerland. Like many of the great minds in this field have been from Vienna, Switzerland. Okay, and so basically, Alfred Adler, he was also from Switzerland. So there was a huge fallout between Alfred Adler and Sigmund Freud. And you wouldn't believe if I said that even after Adler's death, Sigmund Freud continued to harbor negative feelings against Alfred Adler. Okay, because Alfred Adler died in Aberdeen, which is in UK, and he said that like for a Swiss boy to die in UK like this is nothing but just like waste of waste of his talents and all like that. Some gave some interview, but the fate, the tragic fate, is that what goes around comes around. So ultimately, Freud also had to leave Austria, that is Vienna, where he was based. He had to leave Austria during the Nazi Germany occupation, and he had to flee to UK. And ultimately, he also passed away in UK. So that is how cruel fate is. So with this little bit of interesting historical tidbits, like I am so much enthusiastic about this, the history of psychoanalysis and how overall the history of psychology and the history of psychiatry. Definitely, I can keep on talking for hours because all these people, like in a span of a century, you have so many people coming together, right? You have got Margaret Mead on one hand, you have got Mallard, you have got Bowlby, you have got Mary Ainsworth, you have got Melanie Klein, you have got Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud, his daughter also, Anna Freud. You have got Eric Berne. So many people are there in a single decade, and they are continuing. You have Maslow, and they are corresponding between themselves also, and they are giving their own theories also. Eric Erikson, obviously, and so as a result of all this, there was a great expansion of psychology or psychoanalysis. Although after DSM-2, that is, if you know about Spitzer and how the biological psychiatry came and they sidetracked psychoanalysis, and the DSM was wholly formulated in a different way. I'm not going into all those. Again, if I keep talking, I will keep on talking for hours. And so let's just talk about Piaget right now. Okay, this was just to pique some of your interest, because I can suggest you many study materials, many interesting books, that you can listen and audiobooks, or you can read them also, and you will gain a lot of insight at how was the relationship between these persons, how they exchanged ideas, and how they worked. In some places they worked together, some places they disagreed, in some conferences like or conventions they openly quarreled between themselves. The history is full of all these interesting facts. Okay, anyway, so coming to the basic concept that he was a genetic epistemologist. Okay, so what does it mean, genetic epistemologist? So what happened was, like I will tell you from where Piaget got his theory of cognitive development. So once, when Piaget was a child, and then later in his adolescent years, so he had nanny. So nannies usually take care of the children, right? So the nanny had, in order to gain the parents' attention, or to show off herself off, or to increase her value, she had lied to Piaget's parents that your son, someone came and tried to kidnap your child, and I fended off that kidnapper. I fought against the kidnapper, and the kidnapper ran away. And later, after a few years, she confessed to the parents that I lied about that matter. Now, Piaget, at this early age, he became very interested in the thought that even though he had not been any attempt was made to kidnap him, still in his own mind, he had formed actually a total mental imagery that he was about to be kidnapped, and he had thought about the whole process. Okay, this was the first time that his interest was piqued. Next, what happened was he went to from Switzerland, basically, he shifted to Paris. So, from Switzerland, he shifted to Paris. Switzerland, he shifted to Paris. And after going to Paris, over there, he started working with Binet, Alfred Binet. I hope you all know his name. We have the Binet come at the Stanford Binet intelligence test, like that. Okay, so Alfred Binet, and working under him, he saw that children, if you ask them a question, they will wrongly answer your question. But the same question, when it is asked to an adult, he will answer it in a different way, which seems to be more right. So he realized that children are assimilating knowledge as they are growing up, and through assimilation of this knowledge, they are undergoing several cognitive changes. And through these set of cognitive changes, the child is becoming more mature, and his development is progressing through various stages. That is what I try to classify, which means that when a child becomes an adult, that means that it is not that he will possess some innate knowledge, right? He won't be born with some knowledge, something he will be born with. So there should be a substrate, there should be a basic substrate on which the building of knowledge will be built. So genetic epistemology is nothing but, it is a study of abstract thought or knowledge based on a biological or innate substrate. Okay, so there will be a biological or innate substrate, and over that, the abstract thought is built. So it is a study of development of logic, reasoning, and higher level thinking. So, cognitive development plus knowledge, this together is called genetic epistemology. Epistemology is nothing but the study of knowledge, right? Different types of knowledge, like from reasoning knowledge to any factual based knowledge, logical reasoning. That is basically different types of knowledge. So this knowledge plus some genetic predisposition that the biological inner substrate, the cognitive development, and the knowledge that the patient child gathers together will form the genetic epistemology. So now there are two spectrums of thoughts of development of thinking. So how does thinking develop? There is one theory of nativism and there is one theory of empiricism. What does theory of nativism say? Theory of nativism says that at least some kind of knowledge is innate. Theory of nativism says that at least some kind of knowledge is innate to the person. That is, you are born with some particular kind of knowledge. So, suppose for example, if I go a little bit into history, if you look into Mahabharata, so Abhimanyu, who was the son of Arjuna, just kind of correlation, that is what is innate knowledge. So about this theory, so it was said that in the war, so there was a battle strategy, okay, called chakravyu. Chakravyu is where you are surrounded by the enemy and you can't actually get out of it, so it is kind of like a battle formation. So when Abhimanyu was in the womb of Arjun's wife, so at that point of time, Arjuna whispered to his wife of how to enter into the Chakravyu, but he something came up and he couldn't end the conversation, and he couldn't say that how to get out of the Chakravyu. So when Abhimanyu was born, he knew how, during the war how to get into the Chakravyu, but he didn't know how to come out of the Chakravyu, and he was killed in the battle of Kurukshetra, which happened in Mahabharata. So that is the theory of nativism. That is, at least some kind of knowledge is innate or you are born with it. And empiricism says that empiricism means empirical, right? From everywhere, proposes that all knowledge is accumulated from data through sensory perception. That is, as the child develops or grows up, then from various sensory stimuli, the child develops, keeps on gathering knowledge, and that is how the theory of empiricism came up. Okay, so this is the photo of, because often this is asked in this quizzes and all, and also in exams also they show you the photo and ask you. So this is no one but Piaget. Okay.